Hello, folks. Welcome to the Plain Mundane Show. I'm Alex Aquarius. Today we're going to talk about how the Jesus myth was created, how Christianity was started. This awareness wishes to remind you that the story of Jesus, the first written word, was that which was put down some 80 years after his existence on this plane. That it wishes also to inform you that the composite known as the entity Jesus was that which was put together from a variety of information. This awareness indicates that essentially under Constantine, the concept of the Catholic or universal, Catholic meaning universal, religion, the official Roman religion, as that which was a composite of various religious writings which were brought together to form that which is known as the Christian religion. That many of the writings were assembled from various sources and brought into and comprised those books of the Bible. The evolution of the Bible. This awareness suggests there is a book by Lloyd Graham titled Deceptions and Myths in the Bible. That this book goes into the origin of the stories that have been related in the Old Testament, especially in the Old Testament, which were literally taken in many cases word for word or concept for concept from earlier writings. For example, the story of Noah and his 4 sons having been taken from writings which long predated the stories in the Old Testament, and which used terms and names for sons which were identical to those reported in the Old Testament. This awareness indicates that the story of Moses as having been stolen from a Syrian myth, and that it had come down in relation to an entity named Moses. Must be where Moses comes from. This awareness indicates that a great number of the stories within the Old Testament were simply the result of the Hebrew priests attempting to create a set of myths and stories by which they could organize their own religion, their own philosophy, in order to form a more cohesive society in those days. This awareness indicates that the works of Lloyd Graham go deeply into finding these earlier stories from Babylon, which was the source of the story of the Garden of Eden, through Syrian and other cultures and Indian records and stories of India. This awareness indicates that even the New Testament is assembled from patterns related to stories taken from earlier sources such as Zoroastrian, Mithrain, Krishna, Buddhism, and Egyptian, and others, in which many verses are literally paraphrasing earlier writings, and many of the stories attributed to the story of Jesus were lifted directly out of these other writings. The story of Jesus at the well as one which was taken from earlier writings. This awareness indicates that it is of importance that entities realize the origins of the Bible did not come from the pen of God, but came from earlier writings in different cultures and nations at the time these Hebrew priests put this work together. This awareness indicates that these countries who were plagiarized then became labeled as heathen, nations whose philosophies were heathenistic, but this was only after their stories had been stolen. How symbols influence entities. This awareness indicates that throughout most of this past 2,000-year period of the Piscean Age, entities have become more inclined toward open and shallow interpretation of stories at face value, rather than looking more deeply at hidden meanings. It has been the advent of psychology to bring back the significance of symbolism. For in Freud's concern for the dream state, it emphasized the significance of symbols, and as symbols began to become more significant, entities began to recognize symbolism in other levels that had previously been ignored or forgotten. This awareness indicates, however, in the past, most of the empathies in secret schools was on symbolism rather than on rational messages. This awareness indicates that the rituals that have been come down in churches, especially the Catholic Church, are actually symbolism. The bowing of the knee on the altar and the various rituals that take place have certain symbolic meaning, and this symbolism is that which the subconscious understands better than the rational mind. This awareness indicates that if entities cannot and do not receive training or teaching in the significance and meaning of symbols, they become victims of those who understand the power and control available through the manipulation of symbols. How the Jesus myth was created. First of all, you have to realize that Jesus was a composite of different entities, and the name was chosen several hundred years later at the Council of Nicaea, wherein the entity Constantine ordered the various religious sects to come together and create a single religion for Rome, a universal religion that incorporated all of the aspects of the various religions so that all could accept and subscribe to it. Actually, Constantine at that time was started in Istanbul, Constantinople, correct? That's where the first 54 Bibles were put out. I have to study. The influence of Apollonius in Tyana. This entity, Apollonius of Tyana, is the central figure of a certain religious order that was prevalent at the time in Rome, and his life was incorporated into the Holy Roman religion, or Catholic version of the Christian epic, which became the official Roman religion in approximately 300 AD. I guess around 300 to 320 was about when they moved to Rome from Istanbul. This awareness indicates that this energy of Apollonius was incorporated. There was also energies of several other spiritual leaders of Roman religious sects whose stories were also brought in. Yes, the presbyters, I've mentioned in other videos. And there were those spiritual personalities or deities from other Roman religious orders whose histories and religious myths came from other cultures. Krishna, for example, of India, was one of the religious cults and groups in Rome, and his story was merged with that of Apollonius of Tyana. The story of Krishna is that entity who came into earth born of a virgin and who attempted to save people from error and sin, but who was hanged for his efforts. This awareness indicates that this was incorporated in the story of Jesus, and the Apollonius story was also part of this story. And there were also entities whose religion was that of sun worshipping. That would be Tammuz, Tammuz, and who was the son of Easter, which is why we have rabbits and fertility ritual on Easter. That was Baal worship. I interject. Let's see. Wherein there was the sun and the 12 houses or signs, and these sun worshippers had their story of Jesus, in which the sun god had 12 disciples, and these 12 disciples, of course, reflected the 12 signs of those who were the sun worshippers in Rome. This was, of course, an astrological religion. The composite known as Jesus. This awareness, which is a book or an article, folks, indicates that the combination of the many different Roman religious orders or organizations, the different religious sects, forming a composite in which the central heroic character was the Son of God, having 12 disciples, being born of a virgin whose intent and purpose was to help save mankind. And for his efforts, the entity was slain and put upon a cross, and the entity also having certain miraculous powers, including that of those who can heal by touch or raise from the dead or move into states of suspended animation, such as some of the masters of India had demonstrated in various times throughout history. I want to interject here. I believe Jesus studied in Tibet, and he lived in India as well. Catholic Church tried to destroy Jesus and his family. Thus, one aspect of this composite, known as Jesus, moved west to India and into Kashmir, and was recorded as having been an entity known as Jesus, and lived there to a ripe age. Another aspect of this composite moved eastward along with the Holy Family and bore a child through Mary Magdalene. This awareness indicates this was known as the Holy Family, which the Catholic Church made every effort to eradicate and destroy and remove any trace of the information surrounding that entity, but which the Templars made every effort to preserve and to promote and carry on that holy bloodline, even to the point of some 100 years later taking the Holy Family, the descendants of the Holy Family, into the New World through Newfoundland and into what was later to be called the United States. This awareness indicates that in this sense, the entity that contributed to the composite known as Jesus went westward, while another entity who contributed to the composite known as Jesus went eastward. That's something to ponder. I can see that. This awareness indicates that there were, of course, still others. This awareness indicates that in attempting to discuss the story of Jesus in a traditional way opens a Pandora's box of discrepancies. And when you approach or seek the truth of the matter, because the Jesus of the Bible, being a composite of many different entities, or several different entities is not the true story. All right, folks, that's an introduction to this source called The Awareness, about how the Jesus myth was created. And I believe this, folks. It is a composite of several, be it Apollonius, who else did they say? It's also Mithra. It's also Dionysus. It's also Horus of Egypt. It's also the Zoroastrian leader. It's Krishna. But I believe personally, my spin on this, the last paragraph here before I shut off, when we read the New Testament, you can find astrotheology. Challenge you, go look up some videos from, what's his name, Santos Bonacci. He's very good at explaining the zodiac and astrology, mixed with astrotheology and pointing it out in the Bible. It was written in code, folks. There's no doubting it. Once you learn this and you see it from a different perspective with eyes open, you never go back to the same way of thinking. For my example is when the disciples asked Jesus and they said, hey, when you're gone, I'm paraphrasing, who do we turn to once you're gone? He said, well, go into the city and look for a man carrying a pitcher of water and go into his house. Now, that's an astrology statement. When you're looking for the man carrying the pitcher of water, that's Aquarius. And if you go into his house, that's his zodiac sign. And if the man who I do believe did live, who was known as Jesus or Issa or Emmanuel or Yeshua or Yahusha, all those different names, he was known in India as Issa when he traveled, the one who was crucified in Jerusalem. I believe that person lived, escaped Israel, and was teaching more of a Tibetan type of connecting your spirit with God's, the Creator's energy and power. And that's why he would say things like, if you see me, you see God. And he was teaching everybody that we all are, that we all can do it. He taught Peter how to walk on water. Why would he waste his time if only the Son, born of a virgin, could do it? Think about it, folks. Please hit like and subscribe and follow this. I'm going to put up another video. Hit the notification bell. And I will talk to you in the next video. Thank you for watching. Have a nice day.